Hello and welcome to the Qigong series of instructional videos. My name is Jeff Cote and I am the Occidental Taoist. Today we're going to cover Taoist Elixir Qigong. Now, in all Qigongs, as I've mentioned before, there are three regulations: the regulation of the breath, the regulation of the body, and the regulation of the mind. We're going to speak about, in general, for this series, a little bit about these three regulations, but then in each individual part, we'll describe in far more detail the specifics of the regulations, particularly the body regulations, because they're the ones that change the most. In general, the breath regulation here is going to be what's called natural breathing. We want to breathe deeply, as deep into the diaphragm as we can, ideally trying to feel like we can breathe all the way down to the lower dantian, which is located in the very center of the body. If you take the three axes of the body and find where they meet, right there is the center of the dantian, just below the umbilicus, a few inches behind the surface of the body. Now, once we have this nice relaxed breathing, we want it to flow in and out through the nose. Our tongue will lightly touch the roof of the mouth, closing the Ren and Du channels, which are two meridians that allow for a free circulation of the whole body. Also, by placing the tongue on the roof of the mouth, we open the epiglottis and allow the back of the throat to open a little bit, making it easier to breathe in and out through the nose. If you discover that the breathing becomes a challenge for you because of tension in the hypochondrium, or you just feel like you're not being able to take deep breaths, what I want you to do is to focus first on your exhales. Exhaling stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system to induce relaxation in the body, and this should assist you with being able to breathe more deeply. Now, the body regulations we're going to get to in each individual practice. However, there's a basic regulation that we want to work with. The basic regulation is we want our feet roughly shoulder width apart and parallel. Now, I don't want you to get so focused on parallel that you begin to make tension on the sides of your knees. You have to listen to your body. Always in all of these Qigongs, make what modifications you need to allow your body to arrive at a natural and relaxed posture. What I'm telling you about in terms of the regulations are the ideal. If we work with where we are, we will discover that over time our body will start to adapt and change, and you'll find yourself able to get closer and closer to that ideal. So the feet will be roughly shoulder width and parallel, the knees will be bent and unlocked so that we have some buoyancy, as will the hips. We don't want to be locked down and pushing away from the ground. We want a feeling of buoyancy and receptivity in the legs, as though our legs are catching the upper body weight. We also want the center line to be upright and relaxed, stacking what are known as the three dantians, or the three operating centers. The lowest operating center is here in the lower pelvis. As I talked about, the lower dantian, it can move on its own, has its own action. Right? We want the center of that to be directly below the center of the chest, which again is the second operating center, or what's known as the second dantian or middle dantian. And it has its own ability to move in relationship to the other. And then the third is in the center of the head, behind the mid-eyebrow point and the occiput. Okay? And this should be stacked directly on top of the middle dantian, making a plumb line from the bai hui point at the center of the apex of the head straight down to the pelvic floor. We want a feeling of openness in that pelvic floor, as though our hips are relaxing open and the ball and socket joints are releasing outwards, so that instead of having a V shape to our legs when we stand, it's sort of an upside down U. Okay? A sense of openness in the pelvis, and relax it in the upper torso. We don't want to lift or prop our shoulders, so we'll check those and make sure we're relaxing those. And we shouldn't be leaning forward or leaning back. Now, it is very common when people first begin to adopt these stances that they actually lean back without realizing it. It has to do with some habitual tensions in the body, and we often don't realize that a plumb line straight is not what we're feeling. We'll tend to lean back and feel like we're being straight, and it's because of habit. So one of the ways to discern if that's happening for you is to get a mirror and stand sideways to it. Align yourself in what you think is a plumb line straight along your center line, and then turn only your head and look. And if you see a plumb line right along your center line, great. However, I think most people will discover that it is kind of habitual, like as I said, for a lot of people before ever practicing this, to lean back a little bit. Okay? If so, make the adjustment here in the ball and socket joints of the hips, not here in the chest, because that'll tend to cause you to collapse. Instead, we want that adjustment to happen in the entire upper torso. So play with this action here to correct it. And then the last of the regulations is the regulation of the mind. Now, in general, we're going to use a very relaxed mental focus that is sort of a whole body focus. We want to feel from the bottom of the feet to the top of the head, from the front of the body to the back of the body, from the left side to the right, from the inside to out and back in again. We also want to feel into our space. Let our feeling awareness extend outward. What do I mean by that? Well, if you had somebody standing right next to you, you can feel their presence right next to you. We can feel into the space that we occupy, that our mind-body energy occupies. And so we want to begin to pay attention to it as we go through this practice. What are we looking for? Nothing specific. You're not going to be trying to set up any expectations. Instead, you're going to have a relaxed, open, receptive feeling awareness. Now, one of the things that will be helpful is if you start to, during this practice, center your sense of yourself and your action in your actual physical center, in the lower dantian. So you get a feeling like you come out of here. All your actions come out of your center. Okay? That's part of the regulations we're going to be working with. So that covers all our basic regulations and general description of those basic three regulations: regulation of the body, the breath, and the mind. As we get into these individual practices, you'll see there's some modifications that get added to these basic regulations. In the breathing, it'll often be coordinating of timing with movement. In the body, it'll be the movement itself and how we accomplish it. And in the mind, you'll see that sometimes we'll create some specific intentions, but always we're going to have that receptivity of awareness so that we can feel what the result of that action of intention is and how it acts on the body. We can learn then to start to feel the chi flowing through our body as we create intention and the body responds by going into action. Sure. Thank you.